I have to ask again 2 questions to each of you. Ezra, you have said that we were talking or teaching safety, or not, in civil engineering and transport planning. We should, I think this is the normal engineering behavior, that everything what engineers are doing is safe. And if it is not safe, let's make it bigger. In the traffic situation, we should teach risk to make the young engineers aware that everything what they are doing has an inbuilt risk. If this would happen, then we get a certain kind of responsibility for the accepted risk. What do you think about it?
Historically speaking, civil engineering arose when it split off military engineering.
Yes, yeah.
And then gradually various disciplines split off civil engineering. So mechanical engineers became a profession, electrical engineers became. And civil engineers were left with everything else. So the curriculum of a civil engineer is really crowded. You have to produce somebody who knows how to produce structures, who knows how to manage the environment, who knows how to supply water and transportation. This means that in the 4 years that you get the students, you get for transportation-related courses maybe 2 hours per week in the last 2 years,
Yes.
where you have to provide some information about highway engineering, some information about traffic engineering, and some information about transportation engineering. Safety is not discussed at all.
Yes.
What we are discussing is how to design roads, how to make traffic flow, how to plan for future traffic demands. All I can expose is the practice. I have to prepare the students for what they are supposed to know when they go into an engineering office. When they go into the engineering office, they begin designing roads without knowing anything about the safety consequences. They begin putting in traffic signals without knowing anything about the safety consequences. And no manual of those that I showed ever mentions safety consequences. We, Gitam and I, are in the strange position. A structural engineer doesn't have to know anything about safety.
Well, he knows a lot of.
Well, he knows the safety factors for the building not to fall, but he doesn't know about how often buildings collapse. That's not designed for. They are designed for cracking.
Yes.
The hydraulic engineer knows how to make the culvert opening so that the culvert doesn't flood.
Okay.
But there is no person involved. Only Gitam and I have to worry about how many people we get to kill if we design a road with a 1,000-meter radius versus a 300-meter radius. And we don't teach that, and the research doesn't give us conclusive evidence. Rune is here, so we are in a difficult spot.
Okay. Well, I'm teaching it since decades.
Please speak a bit louder.
I'm teaching it since decades, as you know, but this is difficult in a civil engineering environment, because civil engineers don't like this kind of people. They think are blamed, because they have no idea about human behavior in this artificial environment. This is one of the reasons, and the second one I think is that is the excuse that 100% or 95% of mistakes, killing and injuring people, are the driver or user itself. So the engineers are not blamed for what they are doing. There's no chain of responsibility, no feedback from what they are building. to take the responsibility what is happening on this spot afterwards. And now we have in Europe these mega trucks. This is the effect of the overdimension of roads and bridges. If the bridges would collapse, if we would do the right job, the first truck who is overloaded will collapse the bridge. Very soon a negative feedback, and they will learn. And this is not taken into account at all, the long-term effects of the infrastructure. Just to mention one of the many examples here.
Can I just make a comment about that? There's quite a number of people, sometimes thinking about the safe system thing, but it inevitably implies silo thinking. And I think people who support it, that isn't the intention at all. I think I can see that it's a risk. I think it's very valuable to keep warning about it. But integrated policy making of teams and all the rest of it can be perfectly compatible with a safe system. I think one of the practical realities, which comes back to something you mentioned earlier about the importance of politics, political structures, in country after country, region after region, the problems are very often silos in government, and then different structures of forces and limits behind that. Classically, vehicle regulations are responsible for industry ministries, and industry ministers see the car industry as their client that they have to satisfy. Transport ministers very often have a more consumer-oriented approach. Infrastructure, you get the same thing, where very often there's a dispute in a particular country where they says, well, we can do X more kilometres of road, but we're going to have to forget all the safety features. And then there are political pressures to do that. So I think, we actually have to look, it's more complex than just some sort of characterization of safe systems as number of silos. The silo problem is much more substantial than that, and it's existed for a hell of a long time. And one point I'm quite sure I heard what you said, but you implied that most of the vehicle stuff was a lot of money and a huge waste of time. I mean, I would vehemently dispute that. If you take, in Europe, it's different in other parts of the world, but half the improvement in road fatalities in Europe over the last 15 years has come from improved vehicle measures. So, I'm not sure it's been that badly spent.
No, I show you, these two types of system because I was thinking, for example, about somebody talk about new urbanism. There are some experiment, some innovation, concerning how to mix traffic and so on. For example, in India, we see that it's very chaotic, but in fact, it's not so chaotic. There are a lot of communication between road users. Dinesh mentioned that when you saw a rickshaw full of young children, you slow down, etc. So you see, I think that we can achieve safety by using the right type of safety, managed safety, especially in urban cities. Of course, on rural, inter-urban, rural road, maybe we have to go back to the classical system by constraint, reducing speed, speed humps, etc., but also readability and so on. So I think these two systems, has to be used, now by road safety managers and designers.
Yeah, as a final remark, I think there is a great value in defining responsibilities and legislating them, and making highway authorities more responsible than they are. It has been encoded in other transport sectors for a long time. There is in my home community in Norway, there is a fairly long railway bridge. It was opened in 1880. There runs a number of trains over it every day, and all of them are too heavy. So it is being watched closely by the responsible agency. They are taking measurements and everything, and there will be a new bridge in 4 years from now. So, but nobody would dream of blaming the train driver if it collapsed. If a car leaves the road, well, it was because the driver was driving too fast, wasn't it? And if it ends long into the woods, was it because he was driving way too fast? But one of the first research projects I had after they adopted Vision Zero in Norway was the design standard for guardrails.
they used to end the guardrail like this, you know. They had this coming down like that. So if a car hit that, it was like a ramp. It was thrown way into the air, and the Norwegian road administration immediately understood that if they wanted to take Vision Zero seriously, they couldn't design the end of a guardrail like that. It was prohibited. And they started a program ending it in a different way so they wouldn't create or worsen accidents in that way. So if you work systematically in defining responsibilities, making the designers responsible for specific things like that, then I think you can, in the long term, get rid of the blame the victim thinking and all of that.
There is no compromise with physics.
No.
Yes.
I think what we've heard is a reasonable amount of understanding that whether it is from road design or medicine, etc., that there are not enough people who know that what we are working on does not have enough evidence behind it. And people don't worry, partly because they think they know something in this field. I trust the doctor completely, whatever poison he gives me to put in my mouth to treat my disease. Because I think I don't understand it. And so the doctors have killed us with the wrong medicines for years, then they change the medicine, and you have billions of dollars earned by companies selling wrong medicines which kill you. But we don't really bother because we don't we say we're ignorant. We don't understand biology, we don't understand cell biology. And we read Hawkins and we say we know something about black holes, but no one understands what black hole is, but it's great science for us. But in this business, all of us know what should be done. And that's why I think there's a problem. So I think it's very, very important that saying that we don't know is more widespread, so that people start suspecting us and asking for more, asking universities to set up and other places to get some work done. Because we have to have younger people who are better than us and more honest than us coming into the system at a professional level, not dilettantes and NGOs. And for that to happen, because we have not talked about power. And it's power which is corrupting. So if we have a very famous road designer who does the wrong thing, I will make sure it keeps getting done, because otherwise I have to say what I did was wrong. So all things which involve a lot of money, like road building, has a lot of power behind it. And therefore change will be glacial. And people will have to defend wrong things because they've spent billions of dollars doing wrong things. And that's why I think it's very important that knowledge is more widespread for young people to take up the profession and demand that we want more like us, to stop the monopoly of the power sharers. And because if there's not too much money in road building, then maybe I might change. But if I have spent $500 billion doing the wrong thing, how do I say I was wrong?
Thank you. One sentence, two sentences.
Agree,
From Krista?
entirely. And my example is going on pedestrians. There is no research anymore. You never see any real studies about pedestrian crossings and so on. And that, I think, is due to what Dinesh is speaking about.
The next, last one.
Yes, and my remark is we are all the time discussing about the system which is not working well. I mean, the safety of transportation shows that if there are 1 million or more people every year died, so it's a wrong system. We build it, we people. So if we have no corruption, no politicians, not all those obstacles, would we really know here what to do? That's my question.
Okay.
Where is the weakest point in this system which doesn't work properly according to safety?
one sentence, everybody. Would this be a fair offer?
There have been a number of comments. It's difficult to respond in one sentence. Lydia asks, would we know?
Do we know?
Do we know? Some things we know. I showed you a bike lane there going through the intersection. We know that if beside that bike lane we put a 70 centimeter buffer, then drivers opening the door will not hit the bicyclist. We know that. But what does the government of Ontario do? They build this bike lane without a buffer, and then they pass legislation to increase the fines on drivers who open the door and hit the bicyclist. So in some cases, we know what to do, but our politician friends have a hammer in their hand, so they think everything is a nail, everything has to be solved by legislation. Some things we do not know. I do not know how to balance safety and mobility. There is an elephant in this room. Nobody is mentioning the fact that we provide a transport system to enable people to travel on it. That is the purpose of the transport system. And the fact that we kill people in the process is an undesirable byproduct. We have to somehow balance these two conflicting interests. And you guys don't tell us how should we balance it. I don't know how to balance it. I elected you to make these difficult choices.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I agree. We know a lot, and we know how we can reduce these fatalities. I wouldn't say we know how to bring it to zero, except for two measures that are impossible. As I just explained, we know that if traffic volume goes to zero, so do accidents, and we know that if speed goes to zero, so do accidents. But we can't have a transport system with zero speed and zero traffic. There has to be some movement of people and vehicles there, and how to make that trade-off? Well, basically that is, as Ezra said, a political issue. I recently did an estimate of optimal speed limits in Norway. What did I find? Well, most of them are higher than current speed limits. So the implication of that analysis was that there are too few people killed and injured in road traffic in Norway. Now we ought to increase the number, which makes you wonder about the value of this type of analysis. Put it mildly.
Sylvain?
No, for me, the problem comes from the governance. In fact, I think. As I said, I think we have lost, some knowledge about road safety, because I think there are no more these research activities as in the previous year, with a lot of conferences, for example, scientific conferences on road safety. Now they are no more existing. So all these scientific communities, in fact, is reducing a lot, and that's a problem. And governance, yes, governance, because I think that so we need also more research about political science, in that field, and experiments and learning and so on.
Thank you very much. I think we have to give a big hand to the excellent speakers.